Ma'am, the education system focuses heavily on knowledge. But do you think it truly builds emotional resilience in students?
Unfortunately, not sufficiently. Well, there is some attempt to build it, but resilience really is built through experience. And often we've heard parents say to a school, ये तो आपकी जिम्मेदारी है. When we talk with all my workshops that I do, when I ask teachers, what do you expect from your children? Very rarely will I get an answer which will say I expect them to get high grades. Today, unless you've scored that 98.5 or even 99.5, you don't get into the college of your choice.
Still, they are saying it's one person left. Hi, viewers. This is Anchal Puri on Spotify with Taaza Talks. Today, we are welcoming our esteemed guest, Anez Katre, a powerhouse in education and well-being with nearly 3 decades of experience. She has been transforming schools, empowering educators, and guiding students and parents through social, emotional learning and leadership development. हमारे स्टूडियो में वो आ चुकी हैं और हम उनका स्वागत करते हैं.
Thank you so
Good
much.
afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
जी. So first of all, I would like to thank you कि आप हमारे स्टूडियो में आई and really it's a blessing for me. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's a privilege for me to be here and share what we're going to talk about with everybody else. Thank you for this opportunity.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. So, ma'am, tell us something about yourself, a short introduction.
Well, as you already said, I've been working with schools, students, and teachers for almost 3 decades. But I didn't stop there. Before that, I was in the garment industry.
Okay.
So I had to pivot very quickly to education because of circumstances. My husband decided to set up a school in Assam, beautiful 280-acre school, the Assam Valley School, and I joined him there. And I have to say, I have no regrets. It's been a great learning. It's been a great experience. And I think it's one of the best professions one could have.
Wonderful, ma'am. Ma'am, the education system focuses heavily on knowledge. But do you think it truly builds emotional resilience in students?
Unfortunately, not sufficiently. Well, there is some attempt to build it, but resilience really is built through experience. And I think that in itself is very limited because resilience comes from failing and getting up and moving forward again. Regrettably, in schools, often failure is penalized. And because of that, there is this fear of failure amongst children.
Yeah.
And with that comes a drop in their self esteem, a drop in their confidence. And then they're not willing to try something new for fear of failing again. So, unfortunately, that's the way our academic system works. And, resilience is only very lightly touched upon, needs a lot more work there. We need to normalize failure in school.
Ma'am, in today's schools, what matters the most? Marks or mindset? And why?
I would definitely say mindset. So while marks are important and it's essential to get good marks to open doors into universities, to possibly even open doors into jobs in the future, because people do ask for your mark sheets. But if we are to look at something that will sustain or remain with the student for life, it is mindset. So mindset must be given the due importance and the value that we need to. So ultimately, success will come from mindset. It will not come from marks. And as you and I are aware, the generation of today is going to change their jobs very frequently. So they might study science and go into advertising, or they might study arts and go into, technology. So their academics are not necessarily linked to their professions or their careers. What will help them there is their mindset,
Mindset.
their ability to be adaptable. their ability to adjust based on the challenges that life has to throw at them. And that is all about mindset.
Absolutely. Ma'am, if you had the power to redesign the entire education system from scratch, what would be the first thing you would change?
I would definitely include social emotional learning as part of the curriculum. It has to be integrated. It cannot be taught outside the curriculum. It's what a student will experience in class. And for that, there will have to be a couple of changes. One is, of course, a lot more awareness for the teachers. While, of course, schools are doing workshops for teachers, I don't think they're doing enough. And there are some schools who really, really need it. To be able to encourage teachers to create that safe space for their students. I think that has to become a part of classroom practice. The other thing I might like to change is the assessment system. Unfortunately, that is very constrictive. It doesn't allow for much curiosity, doesn't allow for much creativity. If we could focus more on formative assessment, I mean, NEP 2020 certainly has some very good ideas there. And they're also talking about competency building and competency skills and things like that, which are fantastic. If we can actually turn that into practice, that would be very good.
Absolutely. What is the biggest misunderstanding between parents and schools that negatively impact children?
I think when there is a gap in the parents' expectations and the school expectations, the children end up very confused. And often we've heard parents say to a school, ये तो आपकी जिम्मेदारी है.
Yeah,
Now, when we talk about bringing up children, it has to be collaboration between the school and the parent. And the expectations have to be common. Just like a school needs to push a child academically, a parent needs to support that. Sometimes parents are a bit limited in their view about their child, and if a school gives some feedback, you might hear something like, no, mera bachcha to aisa nahi kar sakta hai.
mm,
Or my child is capable of this, that, and the other. Why is he not debating? Why is he not doing theater? Why is he not doing this, that, and the other? So, I think the expectations of parent and the school sometimes are misaligned. And that is one of the gaps that we need to definitely bridge. That limited collaboration and the gap between expectation of parents and schools.
correct. If I talk about social emotional learning, is often treated as an extra. Why should it seen as an essential instead?
When we talk with all my workshops that I do, when I ask teachers, what do you expect from your children? Very rarely will I get an answer which will say, I expect them to get high grades. They will talk about, I would expect my child to be able to manage their emotions, manage their temper, be happy in life, be able to self regulate, be able to, after school, have a life where they are able to work with teams, collaborate. Now, when I look at the list of what teachers really want, it's all falls under social emotional learning. So often we think we want a certain kind of output from our child. When you say, what kind of a child do you want your student to grow into? It's all of those things. It's rarely marks and academics. And hence, it's very important for us to encourage self-reflection in class, to create safe spaces in class where a child can take risks and know it's okay to make a mistake. And all of that comes from social emotional learning. If a child doesn't feel safe in the class, if the
Mhm.
child is constantly worried, if I speak up, my teacher is going to yell at me, my teacher will get angry if I get this answer wrong, they will never try. And then where is the learning?
Right.
So learning suffers if that doesn't happen.
Can you share a moment where you felt a child's potential was limited because of the system, not their ability?
So again, like I said, I think if I was to change something, it would be the assessment. It's a bit like, every child in school is different. Yet our assessments are very standardized. I'm sure you've heard about, what is it? Testing the skill of a fish by getting them to climb a tree. Now, it's very different from a child who's creative to be able to be assessed in math at the same level as the other students who might be really good at math. So I think that is one thing that limits a child's potential because we curb their curiosity, because we curb their growth in the area that they can excel in. That then limits their potential and their growth tremendously. And we end up putting labels on them. This
Yeah,
child is average.
yeah,
Now, the child may be average in a particular skill, but fantastic in some of the other skills that are not necessarily assessed in school. That label remains. This child is average. So that's when a child's potential is really not discovered.
Uh, do you think today's children are smarter or more stressed compared to previous generations?
Definitely smarter. They have access to so much more information. They are savvier than you and me put together. But on the other hand, they're also very overwhelmed. I think the stresses and the pressures that they have in their life are very different from what we have. The expectations we adults, whether it is a parent or a teacher, what the expectations we have from children are very different. It's a very competitive world. In our
Yes.
time, if you got a first division of 60%, you were a wow child.
Yes.
Today, unless you've scored that 98.5 or even 99.5, you don't get into the college of your choice.
Still, they are saying it's one person left.
Exactly, exactly. So, this expectation, the stress to do well, the stress to get into the best college, the stress to do really well in work jobs and earn good money, those expectations from us adults puts a lot of pressure on the child. And then, of course, there's the influence of social media. We can't
Absolutely.
take away from that, social media, technology. So, a real overload of information for the child. So smarter, but much more overwhelmed and much more stressed.
So in today's generation, basically, students and their bags, they are equal.
Absolutely. The weight of their bags, in fact, sometimes is more than
Yeah,
their
some
weight when
yes,
they're
yes,
really
yes.
young.
Absolutely right, ma'am. Ma'am, when a child lacks of confidence, who holds the primary responsibility? Parents, schools, or society?
Confidence in children is very often built at a very young age. So the parent begins the task, but this is then reinforced in school. You can have a very confident child enter school, and the confidence can be shattered in school by the teacher. So it begins by the teacher, by the parent, it's reinforced by the school, but it is also influenced by society. So society also gives tags and names to children of a certain kind. Whether it's playing in the park, you might have hear somebody call up something about a child based on their, maybe their way of walking, maybe their way of talking. So that kind of, also influences the confidence of a child. So it's really a three-pronged thing: parent, school, and society.
Right. Ma'am, how would you redefine a successful student beyond just academic performance?
For me, a successful student is somebody who is resilient, who can face failure and still be able to get up and move forward. A successful student is somebody who can have good relationships, which means being able to manage your own emotions so that you're able to respond rather than react, to be able to collaborate with others, to be able to find happiness in simpler things in life. So these are, all the things that I would define as a successful student. I think money would come pretty low down on my list. Of course, it's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but you can have all the money in the world, but you don't have all the other things that I spoke about. I think you would not be necessarily successful.
Definitely, ma'am. So, ma'am, would you like to give any message to our students of our country?
So I would like to definitely tell them to begin to be more aware of how they are feeling on a daily basis. Because when they're aware of how they're feeling, they will have many more choices to make rather than to think that, okay, I am like this. So, for example, if I have an argument with a friend, they might decide, I don't like what my friend is saying and shut their mind to it. But if they're open to it, if they begin to feel, okay, I'm not feeling, I don't agree with the child or I don't agree with my friend, but let me try and understand that perspective. So be aware of what you're feeling and be open to new experiences. I think that would be key.
Right. Ma'am, let's do one rapid fire round.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So, marks or skills?
Skills.
Okay. Strict teacher or friendly mentor?
Friendly mentor. So not a friend, but friendly mentor.
Okay. Online learning or classroom experience?
Classroom experience. That there's so much more to education, classroom
Anything.
experience.
Yeah, yeah. Emotional intelligence or IQ?
Emotional intelligence. 100% emotional intelligence.
Homework or life balance?
Life balance.
Yeah. Parent pressure or peer pressure?
Parent pressure, I think.
One word for today's education system.
One word. Can I make it a sentence?
Yes, please.
Teach the child, not the curriculum.
Wow. Beautiful, ma'am. Very nice sentence. One habit every student must develop.
Self-awareness.
One mistake parents unknowingly make.
Overprotecting their child.
Yes, that is there nowadays. One message for every school in one line.
Uh, I think the same one. Teach the child, not the curriculum, and allow your teachers to do that. Give your teachers the freedom to do that.
Absolutely, ma'am. So, ma'am, how can people approach you directly for your services? Do you want to share your social media links here?
Absolutely, I would love to. So my Instagram handle is Anez_Katre, ANEZ underscore KATRE. And you can also email me at katreanez@gmail.com. KATREANEZ@gmail.com. I'd be very happy to connect. And I'd be delighted to be able to help parents, students, and schools.
Wonderful, ma'am. So it was really an incredible conversation with you. And viewers, आपने सुना मैम की बहुत सारे प्रेशियस नॉलेजेबल चीजें और एपिसोड रिलीज होते ही लिंक शेयर कर दिया जाएगा और उसी लिंक्स के नीचे अंडर आपको मैम के लिंक्स मिलेंगे यू कैन अप्रोच हर डायरेक्टली फॉर हर सर्विसेज सो स्टे ट्यून्ड थैंक यू सो वेरी मच मैम
Thank you very much. Wonderful experience. Thank you.
थैंक यू मैम